You're listening to Rockland News' election results for 2025. I'm your host, Tom Osa. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we just did the phase one election results. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. Let me just refresh what's happening live. We have County Executive Ed Day with 19,568 votes to Michael Parietti, 7,147 votes. So that's pretty wild there. And we have a whole bunch of different supervisors that are running for reelection. George Holman, 6,200 votes to Eugene Bondar, 4,100. Howard Phillips looking pretty good at 1,485 votes, 98.47. My name is Tom Osit, and thank you for joining us this evening. So let me give you the context here. I just got off the wire with Howard Phillips. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to call in or not. I sent him the link. And we have a variety of election results that came in thus far. And for those of you that are just tuning in right now, if you go to rocklandnews.com/Rockland Election 2025, you'll be able to check out all of the results directly from there. Special thanks to it's enhancedvoting.com. Right now, and I have to say, this app is absolutely amazing. With the election districts reporting, 43% of the election districts have reported already. Partially reported was 132, but those that have not reported was 175. Shame on you, those that have not reported. At 10:02 p.m., we're having a good time over here. We're getting messages from various officials around the county. As I mentioned, County Executive Ed Day is looking pretty darn good right now with 19,000 votes versus Michael Parietti at 7,000 votes. Clarkstown Supervisor, 59%. George Holman to Eugene Bondar at 40%. I have to say, it's kind of like a dark horse with 4,171 votes for the Democratic side of the coin. Howard Phillips, 98% of the vote. He ran pretty much unopposed. There was a write-in vote, 23 people, but versus 1,485, how can you fight? You just can't. You just can't. Teresa M. Kenny is looking like a shoo-in with 97% of the votes, 7,058. There was a few write-ins, 200 people wrote in. Doesn't look like that is going to be able to take over, quite frankly. Michael Speck, Supervisor of Ramapo, 94.64%. That's 4,746 votes. There's a few write-ins, 269. That's 5% of the vote there. Amy Conklin Stam, 95% of the vote. That's 2,214 versus 4.2%. That's 100 write-ins for, I'm guessing it's going to be Deidre Murphy O'Connor. As I mentioned in the previous episode, that she definitely was consistent. I want to say that very clearly. She was very consistent with all of her messaging. And in my humble opinion, I think that's a good way of going forward. Consistency. That is all for the supervisors that are running for office. Let's talk about Clarkstown, Ward 1 through 4. In Ward 1, it's my favorite ward, there's a really tight race between Mark B. Licker and John P. Valentino. 49% to 49%. 1,718 votes, ladies and gentlemen, for Mark B. Licker against 1,715 votes for John P. Valentino. What will be the deciding factor amongst these two heavy hitters? Will it be Mark B. Licker that wins, or will it be John P. Valentino? Also, Ryan P. Orlando with 1.24% of the vote. 43 votes. Not bad. And those are like write-ins too. It was like 2 people. All right. Clarkstown, Town Council Ward 2. Gregory Sheehan, 485 votes against Mike Graziano. He is a cross-endorsed candidate with 7. Sorry. We're having fun tonight. You know, it's election night. It's fine. We're working from the home office. 764 votes for Mike Graziano. Gregory Sheehan, 485 votes. So that's a pretty, fairly close race. 61% to 38%. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, Town Council, Clarkstown Ward 3. We got Daniel P. Maher versus Donald Franchino. So it looks like Donald's fairly well in the lead at the moment at 1,590 votes. That's 59% versus 1,091 votes, for 40.65%. And in Clarkstown Ward 4, we have Gina DeFelice versus Robert A. Axelrod. Bobby Axelrod, ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever seen the show Billions, that's 54% at the moment for Bobby Axelrod, Robert A. Axelrod, 1,594 votes versus Gina DeFelice. She's at 1,339 votes. That's 45.65%. Okay. Pause for sip. Oh my goodness. All right. Haverstraw Town Council, Vincent J. Gamboli, 49.5%. That's 1,381 votes versus Isidro Cancel. That's 1,383 votes, 49.57%. That's literally 2 votes between the 2 of them. Unbelievable. And between the 3 of these people, ladies and gentlemen, for Orangetown Town Council, we have Tiffany M. Sturdivant-Morrison versus Daniel W. Sullivan versus Brian M. Donahue. That's 4,303 votes for Tiffany, 6,088 votes for Daniel, and 6,134 for Brian. 25%, 36%, and 36% respectively. Wow. This looks like it's going to be the tiebreaker of the evening. I'm guessing this particular vote is not going to be handled until tomorrow. We're not going to know the results of this particular race. Yes, that's the word. Like, because you're racing for election. That's what I'm getting at. We're not going to know what happens until tomorrow. Yeah. Ramapo Town Council. We got David Wananunu versus Yehuda Weissmandel. 4,169 votes for David versus Yehuda got 3,466. That's 53% to 44%. So it looks like at the moment David's in the lead. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Todd W. Rose versus Keith Williams for the Stony Point Town Council. This is a pretty tight race, ladies and gentlemen. Todd W. Rose is in the lead with 2,196 votes versus 2,149 votes for Keith Williams. So that is a really, really tight race. We'll come back to that in a little while or tomorrow if we feel like it. Town clerk for Clarkstown, Lauren M. Wall, looks like she's clearly in the lead with 6,056 votes versus 4,261 for David R. Bruin. Town clerk Haverstraw, Raquel Ventura. I mean, Raquel's got it. It's 99% of the vote, 1,452. Boom, done. That person is in, not a problem. Town clerk for Orangetown, Rosanna Sfraga. That's 7,245 versus 91 for a write-in. I'm going to take a guess that Rosanna is going to win. Receiver of taxes, Kathy Campbell Lyons, 2,307 votes versus 29 for the write-in. That's a shoo-in. Robert E. Malone, that's a shoo-in for Superintendent of Highways in Clarkstown. Superintendent of Highways in Haverstraw, that's John Bart Gordon. That's a shoo-in at 99% of the vote. Now we're just running down the line here. Superintendent of Highways for Orangetown, James J. Dean, 98.4%. Shoo-in, that's 7,375 votes. Superintendent of Highways, Ramapo, that's Frederick M. Brin, 5,764 votes versus the write-in for 94. And like I said before in the previous message, the live stream podcast, whatever the heck we're doing here, Joseph W. Rand for the Village of Nyack, 1,237 votes. That's 98.25%. Unopposed. Looks like he's going to be back in. And an update on the Village of Piermont's mayor. And we have a really tight race, ladies and gentlemen. Nathan S. Mitchell, 51.2% of the vote. That's 468 votes versus Kevin Timoney, 48% of the votes. That's 446 votes. So that looks like it's one that will not be decided until tomorrow. Village Mayor, Village of Suffern, Michael Curley, 98.27% of the votes. That's 1,592. He ran largely unopposed. I would like to get him on the podcast very soon to talk about the Regeneron, the flip of Regeneron's intent to bring in 230 jobs into the Avon building that they purchased in 2023, 2024. Unfortunately, it looks like they've reversed course and they're not going to do that. So Michael Curley, I would love to have you on the show to talk about that. And it seems based on what you mentioned today in the press, I think you were on Rockland Biz Journal. Very cool. That you mentioned that you have contingency plans. We would love to talk about them. Village Mayor, Village of Spring Valley, Skenley Vidal, 80% of the vote. Village Trustee for Village of Nyack, Joe Carlin versus Nathalie Riobi Taylor, 50% to 48% of the vote. So that's a pretty close race there. And we're rounding out the final ones here. Michael Wright, 48%. Catherine McCabe at 49%. So that's a pretty close race for the Village of Piermont. Village of Suffern, Joe Megan Corrigan versus Clark W. Osborne, 48% to 50% of the vote. Another close race right there. Joseph Gross, 41%. Looks like he's going to be able to pull that out against Sherry McGill with only 29% of the vote. And Village Trustee for the Village of West Haverstraw. There's a four-way race going there. It looks like at the moment Peter R. Eckert, 521 votes. That's 35% of the votes versus Robert J. LeGros. It's only 485 votes. That's 32%. Kathleen Kuhl, 18% of the vote. That's 271 votes. And finally, Helene M. Nemeth, 13% of the vote, 192 votes. The rest of this is town justices. There's just a whole bunch of them. I'm going to mention one other thing. There's a proposition, an amendment. Let me see if I can find the darn thing. Yeah, you know what? I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to report it. It's 10:14 in the evening. This is our version of a filibuster. We're probably going to take a break after this and report on several other people that will be in on this podcast or not. But at the moment, we're just going to take a break. So that is your results for now. And I hope everybody that heard this went out and voted. That's what I have to say about this podcast right now. This podcast is sponsored by the following: Yabu Fence Company, Dana Pest Control, Easy Temp located in Hackensack, New Jersey, Kobe Sushi, Susan Bova Coldwell Banker Realty, Lauren Molina Muller from Howard Hanaran Realty. Full Shot Bagels, 99 Signs. A business without a sign is a sign with no business. Workforce Development Board of Rockland County, Rockland Works. Get a job, people. FC Perfection Auto Body Repair, located in Congress, New York. Clean Space Maintenance Management Company. Sparkling Clean Homes, Rockland Music Fest, and St. Thomas Aquinas College, as well as our friends, Fiesta Acapulco. My name is Tom Osa. Thanks for joining us, and we'll check in with you next time. Hope you enjoyed this election edition of Rockland's News.